from the book of Mark, beginning at verse 31, chapter 8. Jesus predicts his death. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and he said, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels."
Thank you, Susan. That's quite hard teaching, that, but it's part of the 21st Century Disciple series, and it's important that we look at it and just see what Jesus is saying to us today in the 21st century. And I've chosen to do this one today because obviously it's on the back of Remembrance Day, and when it's Remembrance Day we're full of people who are counting the cost, and people who did count the cost. The famous poem, we gave our tomorrows. I always get this one wrong. We gave our today so you can have your tomorrows. And that's what counting the cost is. That's where the rubber hits the road. And just thinking about Remembrance Sunday just helps us to realise what it means about counting the cost of being a disciple of Jesus Christ on the Isle of Wight in the 21st century. And there's two aspects to this. The first aspect is that Jesus talks about his own personal cost. And then Jesus talks about the cost of following him. Because he's never asking us to do anything that he hasn't done. But, unfortunately for us, he actually went to the cross. He did some difficult things. And we'll just take a look at this. We look at Mark, chapter 8, verse 31. Jesus is teaching them, and he spoke plainly about the fact he was going to have to die on the cross. And I love it. Peter, Jesus' number one sort of best mate and all that, takes him to one side and says, "Jesus, let's just have a little word with you here. All this cross stuff, right? You know, let's think a bit more carefully about this. You know, you don't really have to go to the cross, do you? You're God, you do the miracles, you don't need to go to the cross." He's kind of saying, Peter's trying to persuade Jesus not to go to the cross. I love it, he kind of takes him to one side. Jesus, let me just explain a bit of theology to you, you know. And Peter gets a bit of a rebuke. Jesus goes, a bit of a rebuke. I wouldn't like it if someone says that to me. If someone says, "Get behind me, Satan," I'll go, steady. But actually, Peter was only saying to Jesus what the devil had said to him when he was tempting. "Don't go to the cross. Don't go to the cross. You don't need to go to the cross." He did. He had to go to the cross. And we just seen that by taking communion. Jesus went to the cross so that he could die in our place. He could take our punishment, and that makes us worthy and righteous to come to God. That's why he went to the cross. He had to go to the cross. There was no other way. If he hadn't gone to the cross, I wouldn't be confident coming before Jesus, before God, before Jesus. I'd be like, "Well, no, don't notice me. Looking up from behind my little Bible." You know, I'd be a little bit, or a very big bit, worried. And Peter needed to see things from a spiritual perspective, and we do as well. We've got to see things from a spiritual perspective. And that's where it comes on to the cost to us. And this is not easy teaching. You know, I love to tell you that church is all about coffee. And to some extent it is. But it doesn't stop at the coffee. There's more to it than coffee. And also, we hear this, it's an irony, isn't it? Salvation is free. Becoming a Christian is free. Jesus has paid the cost. And now I'm saying there is a cost. You know, where are we going with this? Well, I'm not saying it. God's saying it. I think of it a bit like gym membership. If somebody said, hey Tony, you need to bulk up a bit, mate. I'm going to pay for a year's or lifetime. Let's go for a lifetime free gym membership for you. I'll say thank you so much. You paid for a lifetime membership for me. And then I come back in a month. I said, well, it hasn't changed me. I still look the same. That's because you haven't gone to the gym yet. And it's a bit like that. It's a bit like that with becoming a Christian. Jesus has paid for lifetime family membership for us. But we need to be part of it now. And we need to say, right, we're in the family, what now? And that's kind of the cost of it. So Jesus has paid for it, but there's more. And it's like we've been a part of anything. There's a cost. And it's right that there's a cost. The things that I've done in my life, which have been the most exciting, been the best things for me, they've been the most worth for me, there's been a cost for. I'm trying to think what that is. Well, I know I worked living hard to get a physics degree so that I could be a teacher. So there's a cost there. There's a cost. And it was worth it. Because when I put in that effort, I actually managed to get a decent job and things. There was reward for it. There's times when I didn't put in the effort. And the reward I got was disappointment. I used to like running. I used to go around running. This is when I was like late teens, early 20s. Did a lot of running. And I had the chance to run for the Isle of Wight. So I ran for the Isle of Wight. And I did really well. And they said, run for Hampshire in the Nationals. I thought, oh, I like the sound of that. And they said, you've got to go across Southampton train twice a week. I said, nah. I like running, but not that much. And you know, to this day I've regretted that. Because I would have had a Hampshire tracksuit. I would have had a chance to take that. Yeah, well, it matters to me. I would have had a chance to take part in a national event. I applied to a sports college, and they said you could come, but you haven't represented your county in any national events. See what I mean? It's like I didn't count. I didn't put in the effort, and I didn't get the reward. There's a cost to get the reward, and that's what Jesus is trying to say here. I believe he's talking about cost, and there is a cost to being a disciple. And I picked out five things about cost that he came up with. And who was he saying it to? It's interesting. He was saying this to the crowd. He wasn't saying it to the Pharisees. You know, I love it when Jesus says things to the Pharisees because, well, I'm not Pharisee, so that's all right. I'm not like that. When he says it to his disciples, he says, well, that was an issue between him and his disciples. When he says it to the crowd, there's no escape because I'm the crowd. We're all the crowd. Jesus said to the crowd, he said, if anyone will come after me, he must, and here's the first thing, deny himself. Ooh. Not easy. Standing here teaching about denying ourselves. Well, I looked up the study Bible here at this point, because I thought, denying yourself. And it says, ceasing to make ourselves the object of our life and actions. Right, anyone a parent here? Yeah, I think you'll understand that then. Because that's what happens when you're a parent. You cease to become the object of your life and actions, that kind of your kids become the object of it. But Jesus says in your Christian life, deny yourself, stop making yourself the centre of your life and start to make Jesus the centre of your life. That's what he's saying there. Then he says, take up your cross and follow me. If anyone would come after me, he has to deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. So back to the study Bible again. And it says, a willingness to suffer and to die for the Lord's sake. I don't know anyone personally who's had to die for God's sake. But I've read a lot about it. And I've just put a few things here on the Bible study notes. Hope you've got them. There's places across the world today, this month, where people are dying for the sake of Jesus Christ. You can read about it. Tanzania. Another Christian leader has been killed in what appears to be a targeted attack, with 2 other worshippers from the church injured. They were all attacked with machetes. That's in Africa. In Iran, 4 Iranian Christians have been jailed for attending house church. Ooh, that's a bit like this. And they're getting jailed for it. They've lost their appeals. They're in prison for 3 years plus. That's taking up your cross. And people are actually willing to do that. And that is quite... When you stop and think about it, you think, well, so what's that saying to us? It's the word involved there, willingness. A willingness to suffer for God's sake. Not saying you have to, not saying you want to, but a willingness. And it could be anything from mild mickey taking. Does anyone have the mickey taken out of them for being a Christian? Yeah. Sometimes you just deal with it, you laugh it off. Sometimes it's quite upsetting. Sometimes you might lose a friend. Sometimes family might turn their back on you. You know, there's levels. But Jesus is saying, take up your cross and follow me. There's a price to be paid. And also following him. Jesus is talking about, in that context, following him to death. He was talking about his death. So it's not always easy. And it's difficult sometimes. But we've got to realise that being a Christian is not always easy. This is not a popular message. I wouldn't have just plucked it out of thin air. If I pluck a message out of thin air, I'd pluck the one about, hey, I've come to give you life and life to the full. Wow, come on! Yeah. And then I'd say, yeah, oh yeah, the fruits of the Spirit of love and joy and peace and faith. Yeah. But we've got to look at the whole picture sometimes. It's not easy, but, just because of the things I just said, the rewards are massive. The rewards are massive. And whatever the cost, the rewards for following Jesus are huge. To the extent that, yeah, I would say I paid some of the cost, not as much as some of the people we talked about. But if you could go back in time, where's Ryan when we need him? Doc 2, back in time, to what? Let me work it out. About 11 years ago when I was, 12 years ago when I was in my teens. Anyway, if you could go back in time, I would make the same decision again. I would choose to follow Jesus Christ. It's the best decision I ever made. And sometimes, like in life, when we do things that cost, they're the things that bring the biggest reward. So if actually we do things that cost for Jesus, they're the things that bring the biggest reward. They're the things that help us grow in our faith the most. You know, it's an irony really about that. And he talks about this. He talks about losing your life to save it. Verse 35. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. Again, that's an odd thing, isn't it? But I've found that to be true for me. If you try and hang on to things too tightly, then you kind of lose it all anyway. But if you're willing to put it on the line for God, you're saying, yeah, I'll put it on the line for you, then that's when you really find life. And that's what I've found. The times I've been willing to say, yeah, I'll just put it down, that's when I've really found life. If I go back to a bit of my testimony, I was living it up at college near Leeds, and I was having a great old time. But it got to the stage where I just knew that I was drifting away from God. I was having one foot in one camp, one foot in God's camp, and they were drifting further and further apart. And I just didn't want to count the cost. And in the end, what did it for me is when one morning I lived in a house with 3 friends, and one morning one of my friends, after a crazy party the night before, came downstairs with one of our lecturers from college. I thought, no, this is just, where's life going here? And I came back and I said, right, I've got to either not be a Christian or be a Christian, not just muck about in the middle. I've got to be one or the other. And I went home at Christmas and I thought about it, and thought about it, and it was a no-brainer. I thought, I'm being a Christian. Interestingly enough, and I don't believe God made me ill, but I believe He let it happen. I had to leave. I ended up leaving that course because I got ill, and I would have had to retake the year, and I didn't want to do it. So I came home, and this was just after I'd committed my life to God. I thought, God, what's going on here? But then when I look back, and we heard this on the Alpha video, it's only when I look back that I know what's going on here. I'd committed my life to Him, and He brought me into a place back here in the Isle of Wight where actually I was willing to serve Him, and He actually gave me the things that I wanted. He says, and I love this verse, seek first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be given to you. Seek first. And this is the thing. He says, if you're willing to count the cost, then these things that you really want, deep down here, you'll get. I always wanted to be a dad and have a family. He did that for me. I always wanted to have a job that I'd stuck at for more than 6 months. He did that for me. He gave me the things that I really, really wanted. And that's because I came to a place where I put Him first. And it's still not easy. I still keep thinking, oh no, God, I won't put You first. But it's a daily decision to put God first, seek first the kingdom of God. And it's when I do that that I get released to be the person that God wants me to be. And I just want to finish by looking at this, the cost. And this is something I found on the internet. And I thought it's really helpful. It was written, as far as I can tell, it was written by some lady who I hadn't heard of, who was. That's what happens when you go on the internet. But she was saying, I don't like, what's all this about being a Christian then denying yourself? What's in this? And she spent a long time working out, and she put it really well, and it's on the notes if you want to read it. She says, as I slowly began to empty myself of so many of the things that composed life as I knew it, my plans, my goals, many of my habits, what I thought were ingrained personality traits, I found that I was not left empty. There's the irony. As I slowly emptied myself of me, I found that I was not left empty. I've begun to see that the process of dying to myself is a process of stripping away layers of sin encrusted with selfishness, and that glowing underneath all those layers is the true, complete version of who I was designed to be. The real me. The closer I get to God, the closer I get to the original version of myself. I thought that was really good. The closer I get to God, the closer I get to the original version of myself. I just think that becoming a Christian might turn me into a freak. People are, no. It's helped me to be the person I was meant to be. And that's what it does for all of us. It helps us to be the person that we're meant to be, the original version of myself that God intended us to be. And I just want to encourage us there that yes, there is a cost. And Jesus paid that cost. And now he says, yes, there is a cost to following him. But yes, every time it's worth it. Every time it's worth it. Just like if you could come up with it. Let's just